Breaking news from around your world on this Monday, July 29th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. 3 people were killed, including a 6-year-old boy, and at least 15 others injured Sunday after a shooting that sent panicked people running at an annual food festival in Northern California. Also dead is the shooter, a 19-year-old who police say used a rifle and gained entry to the packed festival by cutting through a fence to avoid the tight security, including metal detectors. Police were still searching Monday for a suspected accomplice of the gunman and said it was unclear how many of those injured were shot or otherwise hurt in the crush of bystanders trying to flee. One victim was hospitalized in critical condition. Witnesses reported confusion and panic as shots rang out at the Gilroy Garlic Festival in the city of 50,000, popularly known as the garlic capital of the world. The shooting occurred during the annual 3-day celebration featuring food, cooking competitions, and music that attracts more than 100,000 people. Sunday was the final day of this year's event. Gilroy is located about 80 miles southeast of San Francisco. Agents from the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives are helping local authorities investigate the shooting. Diplomats from Iran and 5 world powers recommitted Sunday to salvaging a major nuclear deal amid mounting tensions between the West and Tehran since the U.S. withdrew from the accord and reimposed sanctions. Representatives of Iran, Germany, France, Britain, China, Russia, and the European Union met in Vienna to discuss the 2015 agreement that restricts the Iranian nuclear program. Iranian Deputy Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi told reporters after the meeting ended, "The atmosphere was constructive and the discussions were good. I cannot say that we resolved everything, but all the parties are still determined to save this deal." Iran is pressuring the European parties to the deal to offset the sanctions President Donald Trump reinstated after pulling out. Under the provisions of the 2015 accord, signatories provided Iran with economic sanctions relief in exchange for curbs on the country's nuclear program. The U.S. sanctions have had their intended purpose of hurting Iran's economy while highlighting the inability of the Europeans, as well as Russia and China, to keep their commitments. Meanwhile, Iran announced Monday that it has turned to gasoline and natural gas exports to boost its economy. It said it will export 10,000 tons of gasoline rated at 91 octane to Afghanistan, the first time the country has sold gasoline to another country. Iran's refining capacity has grown as the country becomes more energy independent. Previously, the United States put sanctions on Iran's gasoline imports, but they were lifted when the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was signed in 2015 under the Obama administration. Earlier this year, Iran said it expected to export gasoline to Iraq, Afghanistan, and several countries along the Caspian Sea coast. Iran also announced the completion of the Iran-Pakistan pipeline project, also called the Peace Pipeline, within its borders. Pakistan halted the natural gas pipeline, citing sanctions. Pakistan needs natural gas from Iran to feed its power plants. China's military is holding exercises this week in waters near Taiwan. China's Maritime Safety Agency made the announcement days after Beijing reiterated it was ready to fight if there was any move towards independence for the self-ruled island. The agency did not say when the exercises would be held or what type of forces would be involved, but it placed an area off the coast of Guangdong and Fujian provinces west of Taiwan off limits from 6 a.m. Monday to 6 p.m. Friday due to military activity. It also said an area off the coast of Zhejiang province northeast of Taiwan was off limits for military exercises until Thursday evening. China claims self-ruled and democratic Taiwan as its own and has never renounced the use of force to bring it under Beijing's control. Taiwan's defense ministry said it has been closely monitoring the situation in the strait to ensure safety and regional stability. The island held its own annual military exercises in May, vowing to defend itself against China's growing threat. After 8 weeks of protests in Hong Kong, the Chinese government made a rare statement Monday to support leaders and police on the island territory and said rioters must face swift punishment. Violence has persisted in Hong Kong since the introduction of an extradition bill to allow Beijing to bring fugitives to the mainland for trial. Protests began immediately, and the unrest ultimately led Hong Kong lawmakers to shelve the bill. Activists, however, have said they will continue demonstrations until the proposal is dead. Monday, in its first news conference in more than 20 years, China's Hong Kong Affairs Office said the island will suffer unless the rallies stop. The remarks followed new demonstrations in Hong Kong over the weekend. A group of activists in black shirts marched down a main Hong Kong road Sunday where police stood guard. The protest was staged to denounce officers using tear gas and rubber bullets at a rally last week. Moscow police detained more than 1,300 people following weekend protests. The demonstrators had gathered to protest election authorities for disqualifying independent candidates from the vote for the Moscow City Council, which is set to take place in September. Officers, reportedly clad in riot gear, used batons against the assembled, and several protesters reported broken limbs and head injuries, including Alexandra Poroshina, a Moscow City Duma deputy who said she was clubbed in the head by a police officer. The U.S. and European Union embassies in Moscow both described the response by police as disproportionate. The protests are expected to continue until the rejected candidates are allowed to run. Dan Coats, Director of National Intelligence, will leave his job next month after a turbulent 2 years in which he and President Trump were often at odds over Russian interference in the 2016 election. President Trump announced Coats' departure as August 15th in a tweet that thanked Coats for his service. He said he will nominate Representative John Ratcliffe, a Republican from Texas, to the post, and that he will name an acting official in the coming days. Ratcliffe is a frequent Trump defender who fiercely questioned former special counsel Robert Mueller last week during a House Judiciary Committee hearing. In a letter of resignation released Sunday night, Coats said serving as the nation's top intelligence official has been a distinct privilege, but that it was time for him to move on to the next chapter of his life. He cited his work to strengthen the intelligence community's efforts to prevent harm to the U.S. from adversaries and to reform the security clearance process. His departure had been rumored for months, and intelligence officials had been expecting him to leave before the 2020 presidential campaign season reached its peak. Puerto Rico's Justice Secretary, who is next in line to serve as the U.S. Commonwealth's governor, announced Sunday she does not wish to take on the position. Justice Secretary Wanda Vasquez wrote on Twitter Sunday that she will not take Ricardo Rosello's place after he announced plans to resign effective August 2nd. She wrote, "I reiterate I have no interest in occupying the position of governor. It is a constitutional opinion. I hope that the governor identifies and submits a candidate for the position of Secretary of State before August 2nd, and I have told him to do so." Puerto Rican law states the island's Secretary of State would serve as Rosello's successor, but the position has been vacant since Luis G. Rivera Marin submitted his resignation 2 weeks ago due to his involvement in the scandal that led to Rosello's resignation. Rosello announced his resignation on Thursday following the release of hundreds of pages of leaked messages in which he and his staffers joked about the victims of Hurricane Maria, among other things. The release of the messages prompted mass protests demanding his resignation. A New York Times investigation revealed that the Federal Aviation Administration had reportedly been passing off routine tasks to manufacturers for years after intense lobbying to Congress by the industry. The Times article said the practice reportedly led to the FAA handing nearly complete control to Boeing on the 737 MAX, the model which resulted in 2 deadly plane crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia within the last year. The handover left key agency officials unaware about the MAX's software system. In the days after the Indonesia crash, engineers at the FAA realized they didn't know much about the plane's anti-stall system, which likely led to the crash. Regulators had reportedly never independently assessed the risks of the software. Astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson will keep his job as head of the Hayden Planetarium at New York's American Museum of Natural History, following allegations of sexual misconduct. A spokesperson had said the museum conducted an internal investigation and concluded that Tyson should remain, but provided no further details because this is a confidential personnel matter. Tyson was accused of behaving inappropriately with 2 women last November. Tyson denied the allegations. One of the women who accused Tyson worked for him on the Fox TV show Cosmos before quitting. Fox Broadcasting and National Geographic launched their own investigations into the allegations, but similarly concluded Tyson could return to the air. And that's your update for this Monday, July 29th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful week.